us to the stage, please.
Hi guys,
Hi.
and welcome back to the 5th mini episode of the Strangers by Nature podcast. Our previous episode gave you a bit more insight into the projects me and Talia are working on, and in this episode we want to give you our top 5 tips and lessons we've learned when working on creative projects.
Yes.
So our first tip / lesson we want to talk about is that you should be prepared for everything to not always go to plan.
For sure. Do you have a specific example of that?
Yeah, so obviously I'm working on my dissertation at the moment. It's like my first large scale piece, and I definitely came into it with certain ideas of how I wanted it to look, different bits of choreo I prepared, and sometimes in the rehearsal it just doesn't happen, or the concept just doesn't convey what you want it to as it did in my head, especially as it's a group piece and I'm working with a lot of different dancers. It's impossible to like choreograph and like picture what it would look like when I'm in the studio by myself. So that was a big learning experience for me, realizing that, oh my gosh, the thing I came up with by myself in the room doesn't convey when I actually get into the space.
Right. I think so. That's one way to look at it, but then you also need to be prepared for things that are completely out of your control, like COVID, for example. I worked on a few projects before COVID that were going to, be performed during when COVID actually took place. And I had to completely make it a remote sort of production and figure out all the tech and stuff. And I was like, I did not sign up for this. But all the months of hard work end up pushing you to just commit and do the best you can. And the other thing is sometimes you sign on to a project or you get involved thinking, your role is going to be like this and this is what we agreed upon. And it's good for you to be firm in that and be like, hey, I didn't actually sign up to do that. But sometimes you kind of have to take on roles and be willing to take on roles that you might not have signed up for. So for example, I'm working on a festival right now and I signed up to either be an acting coach or to perform the piece. And I've kind of had to take on a sort of producer role and schedule some rehearsals and sort of book spaces and things like that, even though that was not something I agreed to initially. But I care about it, and it's also not a super long-term project, and it is not too much of a burden. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it so we have a project. Yeah, but of course, like, you should still put boundaries and set boundaries. Yeah,
for sure. The next one I want to talk about is being open to experimentation and playing in the rehearsal space. Again, back to the dissertation. But that's another thing, like playing and experimentation is so important in creative processes. I feel like it's often easy, whether it's a script or choreography, to just go in the room and this is it.
Right.
This is what we're going to do. But the actors, the dancers, whoever you're working with has so much to contribute to those ideas as well, that it's so important to see how they relate to those themes or those concepts or those topics. And just playing drama games, whatever it is, just sort of creating a space where, a safe space, a space where you can thrive and be creative. Because especially when you're working in a black box studio like the ones we have, you have to kind of transform the space, even if it is just a mental one, because you want your performers to be as creative and as invested as you are in the process. So yeah, definitely playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, with projects that I direct, I find it very important to, like you said, make the actors feel like it's a safe space and that they can try anything they want to, because sometimes you plan for a scene to go a certain way and you have this sort of visual, but it doesn't suit the actor that you've selected to play that role. And something might look and feel more natural for them, and you might not know that because you might not know them personally or know their style like super well. And so you have to let them have that space to show you what exactly they want to do. And it might, like, 90% of the time it's actually better than what you thought would be best for that actor, because it suits that actor, obviously, if it's coming from them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah. Right, moving on to the third top tip. And that one is that collaboration really is key.
For sure.
And you really can't do everything yourself. You really
No,
can't.
as much as you try.
Yeah. You can try, and I've tried. You probably definitely have tried.
Yeah.
But no, collaboration is so important. And I think a good example for that one is the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day when the idea came around and Talia and I started, it was just us. We took on the project and we realised
we could handle everything.
It's such a learning experience because there's the marketing of it, the recording, the booking the space, the edit, bringing in guests, sound, audio, all of these things that happen. And for a lot of it, it wasn't our niche area.
No.
It wasn't something that we did a lot. Definitely not with editing. So bringing on Lewis, like our sound and video editor.
Thank
not
you,
even
Lewis.
to be dramatic, it has been.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like recognizing when you need help, and also when you find someone that gets your work or you can collaborate so well. Like Lewis just like is on it. Like it just works so well.
And I think when you collaborate with people, it's important that you can be honest with them and that you can share, you know, when you aren't satisfied with the work they're putting out, or if you're not completely happy with an idea, but not in a way that's like critical, but then in a like, oh, can we, you know, question it more? Is that interesting? Will that suit our audience? Something like that. Because you want to, not everyone's going to be happy all the time, and that's just a fact of life. But I think it's important to appreciate the work that you're doing and to realize there's value that you're putting out and that you want to create something that can impact people.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think in line with collaboration, but perhaps even more important, is the ability to delegate.
Yes.
This is especially for people who are control freaks like myself. A perfectionist. You have to be able to delegate. You might have the people there to collaborate, but if you are not delegating, nothing will get done, and you will lose your mind and you will cry and have a breakdown.
And it's also just a good learning experience, sort of letting go of the idea that I am the only one who can do this how I want it, because it's not true.
No, so
and
many people
9 times
can
out
do
of
it
10
better
someone
than
can
us.
do it better. As I said, they can do it as good or better than you can. So letting go of that is honestly the first step of just more success and more successful collaborations, because you're just opening yourself up to a whole wider range of people that you can work with.
You can focus on the thing that you're best at and really channel your energy and your time there.
For sure. Right, we're getting through them. Number 4 is don't wait until you feel qualified to take on projects. And this one
is really hard.
is so important, I think, especially for me. So on my first time getting paid for a project, like whether like choreography or I was a dancer, what's it called when you doubt yourself? That imposter syndrome. My gosh, I had the most imposter syndrome I think I've ever had when I first walked onto that project, because for some reason suddenly it was like the money aspect was like, wait, this feels legit and professional. It's not just student work.
No, so you can't mess around.
Exactly. Suddenly you're rocking up and it's like, wait, am I good at this? Am I going to be able to do what they asked me? And I was just asking myself so many questions, even when you're in the space with the other artists. And like I was just comparing myself, and I was like, wow, I've never experienced this before in a student context. But you just have to trust yourself, because if someone's willing to pay you, you're good at what you're doing, or at least you're like the best at what they wanted. So
they
you
are
have to
trusting
trust
you, so you have to trust yourself
100%.
And respect. You know, basically, if you're not trusting yourself, you're kind of going, "Ooh, the person who chose me for this role is a bit crazy."
Exactly, and they're not. They're not. They could be,
they
but
know.
They're probably not.
They know what they're doing most of the time. Hopefully.
Yeah. So just don't doubt yourself. And don't say no. I think that's also part of this one. Don't say no because you don't think you're able to. I always say, let someone else reject you. Don't reject yourself.
Right.
And it's so important because you don't know.
Of course, say no if you want to say no, and if you should, because of, you know, timing or whatever. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I also want to add that you should take risks. And for example, with me, I have sort of no musical background. I played instruments at some point in my life, but I don't get it. I never understood it. And this is my second year assistant directing the opera that is on at the theater at the Warwick Arts Center. It's pretty big. And it has gone well because I have worked with people who understand music and I've never pretended to understand music. So I do the parts that I understand, like acting or making sure people move around the space and own the space well and are communicating what they want to communicate. So you can get involved in areas that are not your specialty, as long as you are honest with yourself and with the people you're working with about the skills you can bring to the table. Yeah, because like if I pretended like, oh, I understood the music, I can pretty much conduct it. Like, obviously that's crazy. Yeah, but because I did what I could do, then it went well, I think.
Yeah. And it's also, for me, I've learned so much. If I said no to this podcast, for instance, because I've never edited before, then I would have never learned it. Now I know how to do the editing, how to do the audio. So, do it as a learning experience, if not anything else.
Yeah, and also being around people who are experts or way better than you at something you're not, super comfortable with, you learn so much, like what Amelia was saying. Yeah, like I might not understand the music, but I understand how to direct people around the music, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, well, on to our fifth and final tip or lesson learned. And this one is stick to scheduling. I feel like you want to take this one. Yeah.
So what I mean by this is, especially when you're working in a big group of people, don't ask people when they're available. That's about the dumbest thing you can do. What is best is saying, I'm going to need you every week, twice every week, on Monday and on Wednesday from this time to that time, and say that right off the bat so that people who can't do that and know they can't, they won't get involved, and people who are mostly available during those times and may occasionally not, be able to attend, they can still get involved and then let you know, and then you'll sort of like just accept that they're not going to be there and plan better as you're sort of rehearsing. Because the thing is, if you're waiting for everyone to be available, nothing's going to get done. And it's better to have 70% of the people there than to have 0% of the people there. So there is always a way to schedule in more rehearsals, or a rehearsal at a different time if need be. But you have to, like, especially if you're directing or producing, be like, this is exactly when we're going to meet. If you can't, or if you're going to come in late or something, just let me know. I think that's the best thing to do. That's also something related to like letting go of control, I guess, is just, it's not necessarily letting go of control. In some ways it's like taking control, actually. But it's just to be clear and to be firm, but also to be understanding and to know that people have other responsibilities.
That's quite interesting, because the project you were on was quite a big cast.
Yeah, it was.
I think.
It was like over 30 people. I think it was like 32 to 38. I can't remember. Yeah.
So with my dissertation, it's sort of the same thing, but it's a much smaller group of people.
Yeah.
So the decision-making aspect of that is almost harder, because it's like, if there's only 5 of you in this section, ideally let me have all 5 of you. So that has been a challenge, knowing that I need to finish this section by this time, but also not wanting to waste a rehearsal where only one person is missing it, so we can't actually move on. But again, as you said, you have to be a bit firm at times, and just like for yourself as well, more so than the actors or participants, just setting yourself clear guidelines when you need to be done and when you need to be finished.
I mean,
eliminate stress as well.
There are also ways to go, like, to work around it, I guess. It's if just one person is missing or something, you might be able to just record a video and then send it to the person to learn on their own. And also, you have to realize the value your project brings to the people who are involved, and not just you. Like, you're not the only, so like with your dissertation, for example, like, obviously it's your dissertation to sort of lose, but at the same time, they're also getting involved because they see value in it. And so you can't just be like, oh, I don't want to bother them or something like that, because everyone who's involved in something should want it to succeed.
I think that's a nice way to finish.
I think so too.
So, I hope you found these tips helpful.
Yes.
And I wish you all the success in any of the projects that you guys are working on.
And let us know what things you're working on, and if we can see any of the things. Like, obviously, we're based like close to campus, so if it's anything at the University of Warwick, we'd love to see it. But also, if it's not at the University of Warwick, let us know, and we'll support you or answer any of your questions.
Always. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Bye.